The promotion that broke me. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked into the office that Monday morning. Everyone was acting weird. Too quiet. Too polite. And when I sat down at my desk, the silence felt almost coordinated, like a stage set for something I hadn't been told about. Before I go further, hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed or blindsided at work. This story will hit home. So here's the deal, I'd been working at this mid-sized marketing firm for nearly 6 years. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. I put in long hours, never missed a deadline, mentored junior staff, and basically carried 2 major client accounts that had tripled in revenue over the past year. Everyone, including upper management, had been hinting that I was next in line for a senior leadership role. "Your time is coming," they said. "Just keep doing what you're doing." Well, my time did come. But not for me. That Monday morning, an all-hands meeting was called. Our VP, Diane, stepped up and announced a promotion. But the name she said wasn't mine, it was Ethan. Ethan, the guy who started 2 years ago. The guy who left early 3 times a week for mental health days. The guy whose last campaign underperformed so badly we nearly lost the client. I remember the room clapping, but it all felt muffled, like I was underwater. I looked over at Ethan and he had the audacity to flash me a wink. My stomach dropped. What made it worse? I later found out that my manager, Lauren, the one who used to praise me in one-on-one meetings, was the one who pushed for Ethan's promotion behind closed doors. No explanation. No warning. Nothing. That moment? It didn't just sting. It broke something in me. And it was only the beginning. The Whisper Network. After that humiliating announcement, I tried to keep my head down. Pretend everything was fine. But something in me had shifted. I stopped volunteering for extra work. I kept my camera off during Zoom calls. I started clocking out right at 5 p.m., not a minute later. But the silence was louder than ever. A few days after Ethan's promotion, one of the interns, Rachel, pulled me aside in the break room. She was visibly nervous, glancing over her shoulder like someone might be watching. "I probably shouldn't say this," she whispered, "but you need to know. People are talking." "Talking about what?" I asked, my heart starting to race. She hesitated, then said, "There's this group. Some of them meet after hours. At Lauren's place. I heard your name come up. A lot." I felt sick. I pressed her for details, but she clammed up. "Just be careful," she said before walking away. What the hell was going on? That night, I stayed late and started digging through old emails, Slack messages, anything that could explain what was happening behind the scenes. And that's when I noticed something odd. Ethan had been CC'd on client discussions that I had been cut out of. Weeks before the promotion. I also discovered a private Slack channel that I hadn't been invited to. It was named #Blue Sky Initiative, our upcoming flagship campaign. And guess who was in it? Ethan. Lauren. A few others I thought were friendly. Not me. I realized I was being strategically shut out. Like they'd been planning this for a while. Grooming Ethan, rewriting the narrative, and erasing me from the spotlight I'd worked years to build. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was systemic. And suddenly, it became clear, this wasn't about who deserved what. It was about control. About loyalty. About politics. And I was no longer on the right side of it. The setup. I wanted to believe it was just office politics, that maybe they were short-sighted, maybe I had missed some invisible memo about how things work now. But then came the project handoff. I had spent 3 months developing a pitch for a major prospective client, TechRav, a billion-dollar SaaS company. I had built the entire strategy from scratch, branding concepts, rollout schedules, data-backed proposals, you name it. It was mine. But one afternoon, Lauren pinged me. "Hey, quick change. Ethan's going to lead the TechRav pitch now. You'll be supporting on back-end research. Let me know if you have any questions." No meeting. No explanation. Just a Slack message, like I was an intern being shuffled around. I confronted her, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lauren, this was my account. Why the switch?" She gave me that patronizing smile I'd grown to hate. "It's nothing personal. Ethan just has a different energy we want to present. You've done great work, we're just shifting roles." Different energy? I walked out of that meeting with my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. That was when I knew, I wasn't just being ignored. I was being set up to fail. And then the rumors started. Whispers that I was difficult to work with. That I had a rigid mindset. That I'd missed a few minor deadlines, completely fabricated, but they stuck. I started noticing how people looked at me differently in meetings. More guarded. Some stopped talking when I entered the break room. My inbox became a desert. I was being slowly, surgically isolated. And Ethan? He wore that smug, performative humility like a mask. He even started calling me boss sarcastically in front of others. I bit my tongue so hard, it bled. What hurt most wasn't the demotion or the lies. It was the fact that people I'd trained, mentored, gone to bat for, they all stood by and watched it happen. Some even helped. They weren't just letting me drown. They were handing out anchors. I found the smoking gun. I couldn't sleep. My mind was a carousel of paranoia and questions. How deep did this go? Why me? What had I done to deserve this? I kept replaying every conversation, every meeting, every eye roll or half smile that now seemed suspicious. Then one night, while digging through our shared company drive to prep for a minor client update, I found something. A folder, buried deep inside a mislabeled subfolder titled Q4_archives. It was locked, but not well. I'd worked long enough in this company to know the naming patterns, and I guessed the password on my third try. Inside were slide decks, memos, draft presentations. They weren't just for the tech ramp pitch. They included versions of my campaigns, with my ideas, my frameworks, but with Ethan's name on them. Even worse, I found email attachments between Lauren and Ethan. Forwarded docs that I had personally created. Lauren had been feeding him my work for months, quietly, line by line. One email from Lauren made my stomach turn. "Keep this between us. He won't even see it coming." He. That was me. That line broke something in me I didn't even know was still whole. It wasn't just backstabbing anymore, it was premeditated theft. I'd been a pawn in their little climb the ladder game. And they were laughing about it behind my back. I downloaded everything. Every attachment, every email thread, every timestamped document. I made backups on 2 personal drives. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. No. I was going to use this. Because if they wanted war, they picked the wrong person to double-cross. And just like that, the game changed. The HR trap. I knew I couldn't just march into Lauren's office and throw the evidence on her desk. That would be emotional. Desperate. And they'd twist it to make me look unstable. No, I needed to be strategic. So I set up a meeting with HR. I scheduled it innocuously, titled Concerns Regarding Role Clarity. I knew our HR manager, Beth, was overly cautious and loved anything that sounded like it might be a compliance issue. That would get her attention without raising alarms. I walked in with a calm demeanor and a USB drive in my pocket. When I sat down, Beth smiled like this was just another mild workplace chat. "I'm worried about some patterns I've noticed over the last few months," I began. "Particularly around project ownership, internal communications, and potential favoritism." Her expression tightened a little. She leaned forward, nodding. That's when I handed her the drive. Everything on there is from our shared servers and company emails. No hacking. No personal surveillance. Just data. Beth plugged it into her laptop, clicked through a few files. I watched her brows knit together as she scrolled. I didn't speak. I let the documents talk. After a few minutes, she looked up. "Is this real?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And there's more if you need it." The room was dead quiet. I could tell she hadn't expected this to be serious. But now her posture had changed. She sat straighter. Professional. Concerned. "I'll escalate this to our legal department immediately," she said, almost like she was trying to reassure herself. "We'll need to conduct an internal review." I nodded, stood, and walked out. But not before I paused at the door and said, "Beth, just make sure you look into Lauren's calendar history too." That afternoon, Lauren avoided me. Ethan looked like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't smile. Because this was far from over. The office starts to crack. By the end of the week, you could feel the tension crawling through the walls like electricity. Beth hadn't said anything officially, but word spreads fast in an office, especially when people start getting called in for private meetings and suddenly avoid eye contact in the kitchen. Ethan looked jumpy. He was pacing more, slamming his mouse around like it had wronged him. Lauren? She was visibly rattled. Her usually chirpy morning greetings were gone. Her door stayed shut all day. I kept my head down. Said nothing. Just worked. But the silence was working in my favor. One afternoon, Rachel, the intern who first warned me, slipped into my office and closed the door behind her. "You did something, didn't you?" I didn't confirm or deny. I just looked at her. She nodded. "People are talking. They think something big's coming." Then she said something I didn't expect. "I think I saw something. Months ago. I didn't realize it was important, but now." She told me she had accidentally been added to a shared Google Calendar Lauren used, briefly, for onboarding. And in that calendar, she saw entries titled things like Preppy for client lead role and forward DG deck to E, clean version. She hadn't thought twice about them then. But I remember thinking it was weird Ethan's name was everywhere, even though you were still in charge. That gave me the final piece I needed. Now I didn't just have digital proof, they had been careless. Cocky. They thought I'd never fight back. And that's when it hit me, they weren't just trying to edge me out. They were laying the groundwork to erase me. To rewrite history so Ethan looked like the architect of everything I built. But now the narrative was shifting. Quietly. People were whispering again. But this time, not about me being difficult. Now they were wondering if they'd backed the wrong horse. And I wasn't done yet. The meeting that changed everything. It came unexpectedly, an invite from the VP, Diane, titled Check-in, Campaign Alignment. No context. No attachments. Just me, Lauren, Ethan, and Diane. Friday morning. 9 a.m. sharp. My gut told me this wasn't just about campaigns. Something was brewing. I walked into the conference room with my notes, a backup drive in my bag, and the kind of calm you only get when you know you're holding all the cards. Lauren was already there, sipping her coffee too fast. Ethan walked in behind me, fidgeting with his sleeves. Diane strolled in last, tablet in hand, face unreadable. We started with small talk, pointless, thinly veiled stalling. Then Diane cleared her throat. "I've been reviewing some concerns brought to HR regarding recent leadership decisions and project ownership. I'd like to clarify some timelines." She looked at Ethan. "You presented the tech wrap pitch last month. Can you walk me through how you developed that strategy?" Ethan froze. I mean, I pulled from past campaigns, adjusted based on the new product specs." "Which past campaigns?" Diane interrupted. Ethan stammered. Glanced at Lauren. She cut in, trying to redirect. "I think we're losing focus. This was a team effort, and I personally reviewed." "No one's being accused," Diane said, ice in her voice. "We're clarifying facts." She turned to me. "You've worked on TechGrav before. Does any of what Ethan described sound familiar?" I met her gaze and calmly said, "Yes. Because it's word for word from the deck I created in February. Before I was removed from the project without explanation." I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table. Inside, timelines, file metadata, emails, even calendar screenshots from Rachel. For the first time in weeks, Lauren looked scared. Really scared. Diane flipped through the pages, slowly. Then she leaned back and said, "This complicates things." Ethan's face turned pale. "I'll be following up with legal this afternoon," Diane said. "Until then, I suggest we all take a step back from any leadership assignments." Boom. It wasn't justice, not yet. But it was control. I wasn't out. I wasn't invisible. I was heard. And they knew it. The fallout begins. After that meeting, the office atmosphere changed like someone flipped a switch. Lauren's door stayed shut for 2 days straight. No more team-wide emails. No more casual hallway smiles. People noticed. People talked. Ethan started working from home due to stress. I could barely hold back a laugh when the out-of-office notification hit my inbox. Apparently, the golden boy couldn't handle the heat once the spotlight turned the wrong way. As for me, I finally started breathing again. Beth from HR reached out with an official follow-up. She confirmed that internal legal was conducting a full review of promotional decisions, project assignments, and potential intellectual property concerns. In other words, they were scrambling. But what I didn't expect, what really caught me off guard, was how the silence around me began to crack. People I hadn't spoken to in weeks started stopping by my desk. Not with fake pleasantries, but real conversations. "Hey, I just wanted to say, I had no idea what they were doing to you. You always had our backs. I'm sorry I didn't step up sooner." One even said, "If you ever leave this place, let me know. I'll follow." It hit me harder than I expected. Not because I needed the validation, though it helped, but because I realized how easy it had been for Lauren and Ethan to poison the air. How quickly fear and ambition can turn decent people into silent bystanders. But now the tide was turning. People were paying attention. Whispers were becoming conversations. Those who had sided with Lauren were now nervous. You could see it in the way they triple-checked their emails before hitting send. As for Diane, the VP who once parroted Lauren's every word, she now copied me on every strategic update. Subtle, but deliberate. I wasn't just being heard. I was being watched, in the best way possible. I knew the war wasn't over. But for the first time in months, I wasn't losing. The skeleton in Lauren's closet. A week later, just when I thought the dust might finally be settling, I got an anonymous email. No subject. No signature. Just a message that read, "Look into the Sooner profiles. Lauren's Q2 expenses. You'll want screenshots." At first, I thought it was a joke. Paranoia maybe. But something about the timing, and the fact that I'd only ever mentioned Sooner Pro once during a team meeting, made me take it seriously. I logged into our internal finance portal, searched Sooner Pro, and found a reimbursement folder linked to Lauren. Most of it looked normal: client meals, travel, vendor charges. But then I noticed something odd. Multiple charges labeled client gifts for Sooner Pro, all from the same boutique. On the same day. Repeated every 2 weeks. Sooner Pro wasn't a high-touch client. In fact, I knew for a fact they hadn't had a meeting with us in over a month during that time period. I kept digging and eventually cross-referenced Lauren's Outlook calendar with those expense dates. No client meetings. No calls. Nothing. It didn't make sense, unless the gifts weren't for Sooner Pro at all. My hands started to shake as I opened the receipts. Luxury bags. High-end headphones. A 2-night resort stay. All coded as client entertainment. And the kicker? Each one was signed off by Ethan. I wasn't just looking at favoritism or theft of ideas anymore. This was potential expense fraud. I packaged everything, screenshots, receipt PDFs, calendar inconsistencies, and sent it to Beth in HR under the subject, "Urgent, additional findings related to previous concerns." 10 minutes later, she replied, "Thank you. This changes things. Please keep this confidential for now." I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Lauren hadn't just torpedoed my career. She'd implicated herself in something far bigger. And now, she was sinking. The reckoning. By Monday morning, Lauren's nameplate was gone. No farewell email. No meeting. Just gone. The office rumor mill kicked into high gear. Someone said she'd been placed on administrative leave. Someone else whispered she'd been escorted out quietly on Friday. Either way, the message was loud and clear: she wasn't coming back anytime soon. And Ethan? He returned to the office, barely. He walked in looking like he hadn't slept in days, his shirt wrinkled, eyes red. The swagger? Gone. He didn't look at anyone. Didn't say a word. Just sat down, stared at his screen, and barely moved for hours. Then came the all-hands meeting. Diane stood at the front, looking more focused than I'd ever seen her. "I want to acknowledge that recent weeks have brought serious concerns to light," she said. "Leadership decisions, project assignments, and internal oversight have all been under review. Effective immediately, we'll be implementing a restructuring of team roles and compliance protocols. We're committed to transparency and fairness moving forward." No names. No direct call-outs. But everyone knew. And then, something I didn't see coming. Diane looked directly at me. "We also want to thank those who've shown integrity and resilience through this process. Some individuals have gone above and beyond to protect the values we stand for." For a moment, I didn't breathe. After the meeting, people came up to me. A pat on the shoulder. A quiet "well done." One coworker even whispered, "You saved this place." And maybe, in a way, I had. Not just from Lauren and Ethan's schemes, but from the rot that had been spreading through the walls: unchecked favoritism, fear-based silence, ambition without ethics. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because I had one more move to make. And it was personal. The final conversation. I waited until the end of the day, when most of the office had cleared out and the halls were quiet. Then I walked over to Ethan's desk. He looked up at me, his eyes wary. The arrogance that once radiated off him like cologne was gone. What was left was just a guy who finally realized the climb he thought he was on had been built on stolen steps. "I'm not here to gloat," I said, flatly. He didn't speak. I just want to know why. Ethan exhaled, then rubbed his face like he could wipe away the last 2 months. She made it sound easy, he muttered. Lauren. She said you were too rigid to move up. That you'd hit your ceiling, and that if I helped her out, she'd help me skip the line. So you were okay with stepping on someone who taught you everything? I asked. He flinched. I didn't think it would go that far. At first, it was just access, getting to see your work, shadow your process. Then she started asking me to take over things. She said it was temporary. That you were being phased out anyway. I guess I convinced myself it was just how the game worked. Was it worth it? He looked down. I don't know anymore. I stood there for a second longer, then leaned in. Here's the thing, Ethan. You could have earned it. Eventually. But instead, you let someone else put your name on things you didn't build. And that doesn't make you a leader, it makes you forgettable. I turned to walk away. Wait, he called after me, voice trembling. Do you think they'll fire me too? I paused, but didn't look back. I think they're deciding whether you're a liability or a warning. Then I walked out, leaving him alone with his regrets. The offer I didn't expect. The following week felt like stepping into a different company. Meetings were sharper. Roles were clearer. The office, once thick with tension, breathed again. And for the first time in months, I actually looked forward to walking through the door. Then came the email. Subject, private meeting, leadership realignment. From, Diane, VP. I won't lie, I stared at it for a good 5 minutes. I wasn't sure what it meant. Recognition? A reprimand? Another apology wrapped in corporate jargon? When I stepped into her office the next morning, Diane was already standing, a folder in her hand, expression unreadable. Close the door, she said. I did. We've reviewed everything, your documentation, HR's findings, and the feedback from your team, she began. What you exposed saved us from a PR and legal disaster. If this had reached a client or a competitor first. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Then she handed me the folder. Inside, a new title. Director of Strategic Development. A 22% salary bump. Lead on 3 key accounts. Full authority to build my own team. I didn't speak right away. Diane looked at me, her tone suddenly softer. This isn't just a promotion, it's an acknowledgement. You saw it, and instead of running, you held up a mirror. That's rare. I asked her one thing, why now? She hesitated. Then said, because I let Lauren operate unchecked for too long. I saw signs, but I didn't listen. You made it impossible not to. I nodded, closed the folder, and shook her hand. It wasn't just about getting the role I'd earned, it was about reclaiming my voice. As I walked back to my desk, people smiled at me, not out of pity, but respect. Not because I played dirty, but because I played smart. Building something better. The first week in my new role felt surreal. I moved into Lauren's old office, same view, same chair, but a completely different energy. I didn't want to recreate her legacy. I wanted to burn it down and build something that actually worked. The first thing I did was dismantle her inner circle. No more closed-door alliances. No more cherry-picking talent based on loyalty over skill. I opened up applications for leadership tracks and mentorship programs, and I told the team one thing. Don't flatter me. Challenge me. People laughed, but I meant it. I wanted thinkers, not followers. I wanted to rebuild a culture that didn't reward backstabbing and whispers, but collaboration, candor, and ownership. Rachel, the intern who warned me in the beginning? I gave her a spot on the new client strategy team. Not because she helped me, though I'll never forget that, but because she was sharp, observant, and brave when no one else was. As for the others who stayed silent when things were falling apart, I didn't punish them. I just made it clear, that version of the office was dead. They could step up now, or step aside. And slowly, things changed. Meetings became livelier. People spoke more freely. Wins were shared, not hoarded. When someone made a mistake, they owned it without fear of being buried for it. For the first time, it felt like we were actually creating something together, not just surviving office politics. I started getting messages from people in other departments. Heard what you did with your team. Can we talk? Thinking of applying to your unit, heard it's different. And you know what? It was. But deep down, I knew something else. I still hadn't made peace with how far things had gone. Or how close I'd come to losing everything. And that chapter wasn't closed yet. The apology I never got. It had been almost a month since Lauren vanished from the company, and in that time, I'd rebuilt more than just a team, I'd rebuilt myself. But one loose thread still tugged at me. There was no closure. No final confrontation. No apology. No one ever told me officially what happened to her. HR kept it vague, departure due to internal review outcomes. But I knew what that meant. She'd been given a quiet exit. No lawsuits. No accountability. Just a polished LinkedIn update and a vanished nameplate. Part of me wanted justice. The dramatic kind. Her name in an all-hands meeting, listed under violations. Her legacy publicly dismantled. But another part of me knew, that was never going to happen. Not in this world. People like Lauren rarely fall loudly. They slip out the back door, rewrite their narrative, and resurface months later with a different title at a new company, smiling through polished headshots. Still, it ate at me. Not because I needed her to grovel. But because deep down, I wanted her to understand what she'd done. Not just to me, but to the culture, to the trust, to the people who learn the wrong lessons from watching her rise. One night, while cleaning out a drawer in her old office, I found a notebook shoved behind the bottom filing cabinet. Inside were scattered meeting notes, to-do lists, and one sticky note. It read, "Don't let him get too comfortable." There was no name, no date. But I didn't need one. She'd never planned on giving me space to grow. I was a threat, not a teammate. I stared at the note for a while, then calmly tore it in half. Because I didn't need an apology anymore. I had something better. I won. Full circle. A few weeks later, I was asked to speak at a company-wide leadership summit. Just a 10-minute slot, nothing flashy, something about navigating professional adversity and leading through uncertainty. I almost said no. But then I remembered where I was a few months ago, staring at my screen while Ethan took credit for my work, while Lauren chipped away at my confidence behind closed doors. I remembered the sleepless nights, the whispered rumors, the loneliness of realizing no one was coming to save me. And I said yes. I stood in front of over 100 people, some who had known me for years, others who had only heard fragments of what happened. My heart was steady. My voice clear. I used to think that doing good work was enough, I began. That if I kept my head down, met my deadlines, supported my team, that I'd be rewarded, protected, respected. I paused, then continued. But sometimes, good work threatens the wrong people. And when that happens, the system doesn't break, it protects itself. Not you. I saw heads nodding. But here's what I learned: integrity only matters if you're willing to fight for it. And silence doesn't keep you safe. It just hands the mic to the wrong people. I closed with this. We don't just build companies with ideas. We build them with culture. And culture isn't made in all hands decks. It's made in the moments when someone chooses courage over comfort. Even when no one's watching. Afterward, people lined up to talk to me. Not because I was promoted. Not because I had won. But because they saw themselves in that story. Because they'd felt the same betrayal. The same silence. The same urge to give up. And maybe now, they wouldn't. As I walked back to my office, I glanced out the window. Same skyline. Different world. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever faced betrayal at work or felt like your voice didn't matter, subscribe. There's more power in your story than you think.